Hey there, athletes. Coach John Ferry. Very excited, as always, to welcome you to our athlete briefing for our week number 3 of the Summer Send-Off Challenge. This kind of unusual time for us in the middle of Saturday afternoon. So thanks for being here. Thanks for watching, hopefully a little bit later if you can make it. I'm coming at you today live from beautiful Boston, Massachusetts. I was out running here this morning, forgot how much I like this town, what a wonderful running town it is. Obviously, it's got an excellent run on the Charles. Strong recommend if you're finishing up some summer travel plans. Boston, excellent time to visit, excellent running city. So happy to be here. My kind of personal roadshow will continue for the next couple weeks, so our briefing time may continue to be a little bit erratic for the next 2 weeks. Apologies, we'll get settled back in coming into the fall and winter months here, but trying to finish up my own summer travel, so bear with me over the next couple weeks. Certainly try to keep them being recorded, so they'll live on the Facebook page. The link to the YouTube link will live on the portal, so try to make sure we keep getting those questions answered here over the next couple weeks. As always, we're going to start with our week 2 review here. So started with the interval run using half marathon pace and marathon paces. So we're working sub-threshold energy zones here on a scale of 1 to 7. That's kind of that middle to high zone 3, teetering on zone 4. If you're familiar with that 1 to 7 kind of zone scale. For those of you that ran the week 1 workout as opposed to the 20-minute distance test, this is just a little bit of a progression on what we did before. So hopefully it continued to feel comfortable, felt a little bit stronger this time around. Key run number 2 of week 2 here was that fartlek run. So this is one we haven't ever used in the challenge format. Certainly something I worked with athletes before in the past and seemed like everybody really liked it. We're having fun with it, which was exactly the point. So if you missed last week, that fartlek workout is a real thing. One, I didn't just make it up, but it translates from a Swedish word meaning speed play, where different paces, different distance, different times. It actually is really designed to be an unstructured workout where you kind of run it outside with a group and pick landmarks and pick up paces and slow down. But the point, once again, is to experiment with different paces, push a little bit over your easy pace, get a broad span workout over the scope of many different energy zones, and mostly have some fun. So I'm glad to see, it seems like things worked out great there. And as always, we finish off the week with our endurance run. So this is just nice, light and long. Want to make sure you stay in control of your breathing the whole time and have a blast with this one. As I said, had an amazing time out on the Charles River today. Housekeeping, continue to check those boxes and chasing 100% completion percentage over our 6 weeks. I mentioned last week, I'll mention again this week. So I hear the team behind me, our admin staff, is going to be peeking in, looking at who's tracking along at 100% and doing some giveaways here in the week to follow. So I don't know exactly how it's going to go down, but someone is looking for that 100%. They're going to start picking people arbitrarily and sending some gear out in the mail. So make sure you're checking that box. Make sure you're staying as close to 100% as possible. It gives a little bit of extra incentive this time around. For those people participating in the strength program, you will notice once again that week 3 builds on week 2. So I thought this is actually a really good time to address why that is, because we got some questions about why are the same workouts, week after week after week for a few weeks before it shifts, as opposed to a different workout every day. And so the answer is it's just way more beneficial than just kind of picking and choosing random exercises on a day-to-day basis. You don't really have anything to grow or build upon. As a matter of fact, there's a tremendous amount of ideology about doing the exact same thing with your running and cycling workouts and actually using the same workouts structure of a week to progress over the scope of 3 or 4 weeks at a time before moving on to the next set. You want to be at a pretty established baseline when you do that, but certainly something I work with athletes and incorporate pretty often. So what you're looking to do is in week 1, all we're really doing is introducing the exercise. Week 2, you're looking to improve upon the exercise, get a little bit better than you were in week 1. And then week 3 and week 4, if you're using a 3 or 4 week cycle, you're looking to really find some mastery of that exercise and or workout and feel the best you have felt so far. So I don't know about everybody else out there, but I'm rarely perfect first time around. Hence, that is why things repeat multiple times before you move on, especially in a strength training situation. Now, to our week 3 workouts. Once again, we're doing an interval run using marathon and half marathon pace. So once again, this warm-up is featuring strides. A lot of people ask pretty often about like what's the pace goal of a strider, and it can be all over the place. So the answer 1 is that there is no particular pace goal. You're just really looking to pick up the pace above easy, start to elongate that stride, start to get comfortable. However, if you're a person that desperately needs a target, what I would say for this workout in particular and things like it is you probably want to at least get up to that half marathon pace. That's the fastest pace of this workout. Even if it's just for a second or two, that's actually exactly a perfectly executed stride. You're just hitting that peak pace for a second or two. So make sure when you're doing them, you're actually accelerating up to a pace that you're going to see in the workout as opposed to just barely moving a little bit faster. So if you're looking for a target, try to get up to the pace you're going to hit, that half marathon pace in this workout. It's going to help you prepare for the workout itself. Otherwise, we're moving in this workout, we're starting to sustain those paces just a little bit longer. So these are kind of medium paces. As I said in the week 2 review there, kind of mid zone 3, high zone 3. So something that should be pretty darn sustainable for a very extended period of time. So we're just working on getting that sustained, that big bulk of zone 3 time over the scope of the workout. So hopefully you enjoy this one. Run number 2, a progressive interval run. So I'm sure most people out there have done a progression run at some point of their running journey. They're great, they're super valuable, excellent race preps, but can also be really hard and really intimidating if you don't feel comfortable sustaining a pace for 20, 30, 40 minutes at a time at a zone 3 to zone 4 or above. So those progression runs can be really challenging. So in this workout, what we've done is try to take a progression run and break it down a bunch of times over the scope of the whole workout. So we're going to have these mini progression runs within one run. So what we get to do is we get a lot of alternation of pace. So we're going to alternate between 4 pace zones multiple times. So a lot of practice, finding a pace, settling in, moving to another pace, trying to learn what those different paces and different effort levels feel like. We get, over the scope of the workout, ended up a big chunk of zone 3 training time and even a little bit of threshold as well, because all of these zones really are alternating between probably like a high zone 2 and low zone 4 at the most. So over the scope, kind of by accident, we're getting a huge amount of zone 3 training time over the scope of that whole workout. And hopefully it's also really fun, really engaging with all those change of pace, change of tempo, that it just flies by. But you get a ton of the benefit of a long, bulky progression run, but put these itty bitty little breaks in there to make it hopefully a little bit more fun, a little bit more sustainable, a little bit easier than, once again, trying to hold those big tough blocks for 30, 40 minutes at a time. So great workout, personal favorite of mine just to kind of throw on my own schedule. Hope you all like it as well. And once again, as always, our endurance run to finish this the week up. So we're going to put a little bit more volume here, just stepping up. No problem. The ways just to combat that: relax the pace, keep it easy. Feel free to include a little walk break in there if you need to walk. It's no big deal. And as always, have some fun with it. So a few questions that came up via the group. So the first question here was, if we want to add let me start that again. If we want to cross train and add a ride or two to strength days, do you think they should all be zone 2, 45 or 30 minutes? So based on the plan as written, I do think additional cardio days should be zone 2. So if you wanted to add in another high intensity cardio day, that's okay. Well, what I would do is replace one of our key running workouts with just easy running instead. I've certainly said many times, but it bears to repeat. I like, over the course of a training week, no matter how many modalities are involved, 3 key workouts, which is inclusive of the long run. So over the middle of the week, you're really looking at picking those 2 key sessions across multiple sports. So once again, if you're doing the run plan written as is, I would use supplemental cross training in zone 2. If you wanted to add intensity there, I would take out one of the key rides or one of the key runs and replace it with the ride. In terms of 45 versus 30 minutes, I knew there was a second part of that question. In terms of 45 versus 30 minutes, it depends entirely on your training history. So my 45 minutes is going to be different than someone else's 45 minutes, etc. So even in a zone 2 setting. So if you're incredibly comfortable with 45 minutes is probably great. If you have your plan right now and you're looking to add on to it with a new stimulus, starting at 30 minutes and then bumping it up to 45 minutes a week, 2-3 weeks in, is probably the way to go. Because anytime you add a session, you're adding frequency, you're adding volume to your week. You want to be thoughtful about what that add is like. So adding a session is a big bump. So if it starts at 30 and goes to 45, great. It's certainly better than starting at 45 and realizing you probably should have gone down to 30. So be thoughtful about that. Our next question here was, any tips on leg cramps on longer distance runs? What to do during your run to be able to continue and finish your workout or your race? So this is a little bit tricky one. So there's actually an old school and new school kind of thought process around muscle cramps, especially during running. So the old school thought process really had a lot to do with hydration, or therefore lack of electrolytes. New school thought is that it's probably a little bit less nutritionally related and has just an over contraction or overuse of the muscles, and or a general just kind of lack of strength in that muscle to be able to do what you're asking it to do. So in my personal, incredibly non-medical opinion, I personally believe that it probably is a little bit of both. I have used electrolyte supplementation in the past, as well as obviously most people who are doing marathons are using some sort of carbohydrate replenishment as well. And I have found success with that versus not doing it. Perhaps it was a placebo, perhaps not. I wouldn't dissuade anyone from doing it, especially if cramping was an issue. However, eventually you are going to have to strengthen that muscle as well. Nutritionally, can't do it. So runners, we are the worst in thinking like, well, I run, my legs are strong because I run. Cyclists do it too. It's different. You've got to get in, especially if you're having cramping issues, and do the strength training to really strengthen the muscle. Running is great. You will get stronger muscles, but as a muscular endurance, so different kind of strength capacity, training muscular endurance, not training strength. So it's taking time, doing PT, getting into a gym in the off season, making sure you have the stronger body overall is probably the best way to prevent the cramps. So now the general way, overall ways to prevent cramps: train appropriately. You got to make sure that your running progression is appropriate to where you are right now. You see issues plenty of times. People try to miss a couple weeks, kind of realize they're behind, try to shoot ahead, try to catch up to their training plan. That's tough. You're pushing your body to a spot it's not really prepared to go. And even if you have been a stickler to your training plan and hitting it perfectly, it's still, especially on a marathon build, which I am making a bit of an assumption, which this question didn't mention a marathon build, but if we're getting up to a half marathon builds where you're running for hours at a time, it is a lot of running. And if you have not been running consistently at 90 minutes plus for a long time, that is incredibly taxing on your body. So just know it's okay, gotta kind of work through it, but you're putting your body through a lot. So be patient with it. Kind of way to, I mentioned strength train, work with a PT, work with a personal trainer, work by yourself, do your own research, but especially the posterior chain muscles, calves, hamstrings, glutes. Those are the common things that are going to cramp in the scope of your long runs. You got to make sure you're really strengthening, building a strong foundation to pile everything else on top of. And then pace appropriately, and this can be obviously in your workouts and your races, is if you are taking your body to the high end of its zones, pushing threshold, there's a lot of acid starting to accumulate in the muscles, you're going to have that cramping issue sooner than if you were at a little bit lower pace. You're going to be able to go longer, be more comfortable, kind of avoid that cramping issue deeper into your workout and a race. Inevitably, at some point, cramps are going to come in. And when they do, the best thing to do is actually to stop and to stretch the muscle. The stretch of that muscle is going to hopefully signal things to kind of calm down. You might have to take just a minute or two to walk afterwards, and then hopefully you can kind of get right back into your activity, but keep the intensity nice and low, let things settle out. You can come through it. You can come through it and get back in and run a successful race or training run after. But sure doesn't feel good in the moment. So hopefully that helps. Like I said, certainly don't be dissuaded from using nutritional supplements like electrolyte intake during your long run. I think there's plenty of benefit to be seen there. But for the most part, you've got to strengthen those muscles. And then finally, going to pull a question that Melissa Bartlett submitted, and I didn't get to the other night on our All Access briefing, but I thought it could be valuable, especially as so many people are going into their biggest training chunks here in preparation for all the major fall events out there. So Melissa asked, I would love to hear how to settle in for the long miles. My peak weeks for Chicago are on the horizon, and I'm always up for a tip. So my best advice, and whether this is a marathon, ultra marathon, or just a 45 or 60 minute long run here, which for plenty of people is going to push them to to their limits, is to break it down into much smaller segments. So in Melissa's situation here, planning for her big, inevitably 20 plus mile long runs, if I'm planning a 20-mile long run, I'm thinking about it in 5 4-mile segments consisting of 4 1-mile segments. So when I'm on mile 1, I'm not thinking yet about 16, 17, 18, 19. That's very daunting. What I'm really thinking about is to get halfway through segment 1 and then to get through segment 1. And at that 4-mile marker, when I'm at the end of my segment 1, there are a few things I'm going to do. I'm going to start introducing my fuel. I'm going to check my hydration strategy, that I've taken in the amount of ounces so far that I felt like I should have taken in. I'm going to make sure I feel comfortable in my kit, that nothing's rubbing, I'm not too hot, I'm not too cold. And I'm going to do a little bit of a mental body scan, see what feels tight. Is there anything, or do I have any little hot spots that are bugging me that I should just be thoughtful of during the run? And that kind of self-check, that could take me a few minutes. It certainly could take, half a mile to a mile to kind of go through that mental checklist and settle in. At which point, I'm really only thinking about getting through segment 2, my 4 to 8 mile stretch. And it just does not have to be in 4-mile segments. You can break this up any way that you want that makes sense for you. Certainly can be by landmarks. If you're very familiar with your running path of, at this bridge, I'm going to go through my mental assessment. And then at that bell tower, I'm going to, do A, B, C, and D. Because what additionally I'll do is try to make little treats and incentives for myself. So not everyone finds the fueling during long running as a treat. It's a lot of times a little bit more as a chore. But it is something over a scope of running where at least it keeps my mind occupied, gives me a little bit of sugar or something to take in. It's just something to be thoughtful of for myself and something to be looking forward to. Additionally, I will only take in my fuel, my hydration, make gear switches on those mile markers. The reason I only do it on the mile markers is when you're running big races, usually the aid stations are also on the mile markers. So I don't want to get used to being able to do these things whenever I want. I want to kind of discipline myself to make sure I'm taking in the fuel, taking the fluid at those mile markers over the scope. Gives me, once again, a little something to focus on, a little something to look forward to. I have to be thoughtful about it, approaching that mile marker, making sure that I'm ready to do my fuel exchange. So, put some, put a little, kind of impetus into the workout, put some weight on some things so that you have to be ready at certain times. It will help. It's just those little things that make a big difference, especially in the big long races like the marathon. So break it down, put some little treats in there for yourself, something to look forward to. And hopefully, at least for me, that has been a very effective way to feel less stressed, especially in those early miles, mile 2, 3, 4, than thinking 16 to go, that I am only approaching the end of segment 1, 2, 3, 4, and I can kind of chip away at the workout, the race, etc., a little bit at a time. Well, ladies and gents, that is all here for week 3. Thanks so much for joining me on our unusual Saturday after athlete briefing. And I cannot wait to see you next week for our week 4 briefing. Have a good one.